The night was calm, but the man could not sleep. His small house stood near the forest, close to the old river that had carried many secrets for centuries. The moonlight spread across the water like silver paint, and the trees whispered with the cool wind. He often came here when his mind was restless, just to walk and listen to the river, but tonight something felt different. As he stepped closer, he heard a sound, soft, trembling, and strange. It was not the cry of an animal. It was not the call of a bird. It was a voice weak and frightened, yet alive. He froze, his heart racing. The river's surface moved in unusual ripples, glowing faintly as if the water itself carried light. He bent down and saw something floating toward him. At first he thought it was just broken wood or a bundle of cloth caught in the current, but when he pulled it near the shore he realized it was no ordinary bundle. Inside the strange fabric something small was moving. The fabric itself shimmered with a faint blue light, and symbols he could not understand flickered across it like fireflies. Carefully, with trembling hands, he opened the glowing wrap. His breath stopped. Inside lay a baby. Not a human baby, but an alien child. Its skin was smooth and pale with a soft silver tone. Its eyes were closed, and faint blue veins glowed under the skin as if starlight ran in its blood. Small ridges on the forehead glimmered faintly, and when the child shifted, he saw tiny fingers with delicate claws. The man felt a wave of fear rush through him. This was not possible. A creature like this should not be here in this old river near his lonely house, but at the same time he felt something else. The baby opened its eyes and he saw them glow softly. Two large, bright orbs filled with innocence and helplessness. The child made a soft, broken cry, something between a whimper and a whisper, as if calling for someone. His first thought was to run. To leave it there. This was dangerous beyond anything he understood. But then the child's tiny hand reached out and touched his finger. The glow from its skin passed into his hand, warm and strangely comforting. In that moment, the fear melted. He could not leave it. He lifted the child carefully and the fabric wrapped itself tighter, almost like it knew he was the protector now. The glow dimmed as the baby pressed its head against his chest. He looked at the river, wondering where it had come from. Was it dropped here by accident? Was it abandoned? Or was it being hidden? Questions filled his mind, but no answer came. Only the sound of the river moving quietly under the moon. He turned back toward his home. Each step felt heavy, as if unseen eyes were watching him from the forest. The air was colder now. The trees seemed darker and the night's silence deeper. He quickened his pace. Inside his house, he placed the baby on his old wooden table. The child moved softly, making strange sounds, not like human words, but full of meaning. The man could not understand them, but the tone felt like fear. He boiled some milk, though he had no idea if it was safe. To his surprise, the baby accepted it, drinking slowly, its glowing eyes staring up at him with quiet trust. As the night grew deeper, strange things began to happen. The lights in his house flickered. His phone, lying on the table, turned on by itself and displayed symbols he had never seen. The old clock on the wall stopped ticking, frozen in time. He looked at the baby. Its tiny hand twitched, and the air around it shimmered like heat rising from stone. The man sat in silence, realizing this child was not just alien in body. It carried power. Something far beyond his understanding. He whispered to himself, "Why are you here, little one?" The baby made a soft cooing sound, as if answering. It smiled faintly, and for the first time he felt not fear but responsibility. This child needed him. But outside in the distance, a sound broke the silence. A faint hum, almost mechanical, echoing through the forest. The man stiffened, his heart pounding. He stepped to the window and saw strange lights moving among the trees. Not flashlights. Not lanterns. They glowed in colors no human light carried, deep purple, green, and silver. Someone was searching. The man turned back to the baby, who now looked at him with wide, glowing eyes, almost as if it knew danger was near. He whispered, "Don't worry. You're safe here." But even as he spoke, he wondered if that was true. He had no idea that by pulling the baby from the river, he had stepped into a world of secrets. A world where humans were never meant to interfere. And tonight was only the beginning. The small house was darker than usual. The man sat by the wooden table, the alien baby lying wrapped in its strange glowing cloth. He tried to steady his breathing, but every sound in the silence seemed louder. His own heartbeat, the faint hum of the old fridge, and the baby's soft, otherworldly breathing. He had never imagined such a night. Just hours ago, life had been simple, lonely, and quiet. Now he was watching over a child that clearly did not belong to Earth. The baby's eyes flickered open again, and when they did, the dim room seemed to glow. They were not human eyes. They were vast, like tiny galaxies swirling with blue and violet light. When the child blinked, the lights around the room pulsed in rhythm, as though electricity itself responded to its presence. The man whispered, "What are you?" But the baby only made a soft cooing sound, clutching his finger with its claw-like hands. Strangely, that touch didn't hurt. It was delicate, filled with trust. Suddenly, the bulb overhead began to flicker violently. The light stretched, then snapped off completely, leaving the room in near darkness. His phone buzzed on the table, screen glowing without touch. It displayed the same alien symbols as before, shifting and rearranging as if trying to form words. The man stepped back, his heart pounding. The baby let out a sharp cry. It was not like any human baby's cry. This sound vibrated through the walls, echoing into the night outside. For a moment, the house itself felt alive, trembling faintly as though shaken by the cry. Then silence returned, but it was a silence heavy with warning. The man moved quickly to close the curtains. He didn't know why, but every instinct told him someone or something might be watching. He locked the door, then returned to the table. The baby's glow had dimmed and its breathing slowed. It was asleep again, looking almost peaceful. He sat across from it, elbows on the table, hands pressed to his face. His mind spun. If this was real, and he knew it was, then someone must be looking for the child. Maybe soldiers. Maybe worse. If they came here, what would they do to him? To his home? Would they kill him for simply holding the child? He looked at the glowing cloth again. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, and he noticed something new, small shifting lines across it, almost like text. But no human language looked like that. The lines curved and glowed, rearranging every few seconds. It felt alive, like the cloth itself was protecting the child. He thought about calling someone, the police maybe. But what would he say? "Hello, I found an alien baby in the river." They would lock him in a hospital, or worse, take the child away. And something in his heart whispered, "Don't let anyone take it." The night stretched on. He carried the baby into his bedroom and laid it gently on his bed. The glow around the child filled the room with a faint silver-blue light, soft but strong enough to see clearly. He sat in the chair nearby, refusing to sleep, his eyes fixed on the small alien. Around midnight he heard it again, the strange hum outside. This time louder, closer. His heart raced as he stood and went to the window. Between the trees he saw lights, unnatural lights floating low and moving with purpose. They flickered purple, green, and silver, sweeping slowly as if searching. The man froze. He pulled the curtains tighter and leaned against the wall, his breathing sharp. Whoever they were coming closer. He turned to the baby. It had opened its eyes again, and now they glowed brighter, as if reacting to the presence outside. He whispered, "Shh, stay quiet, little one." But he knew the child could not understand him. Suddenly the door rattled, not knocked, rattled as if tested by something strong and uninvited. His stomach dropped. He grabbed the old hunting rifle from the corner of the room. His hands shook as he aimed it at the door. The rattling stopped. Silence. Then came a soft knock. 3 slow taps. He swallowed hard, pressing his back against the wall. No neighbor would come this late. No human visitor would knock like that. His eyes darted to the baby. The child was staring at the door, glowing brighter with every second. The knock came again, louder this time. The man's pulse hammered in his ears. He whispered under his breath, "Who are you?" And then, to his horror, a voice answered from the other side of the door. It was not English. It was not any language he knew. But it was sharp, commanding, and it carried power. The alien words echoed through the wood, vibrating the air around him. The baby let out another cry, this one more desperate, more frightened. The glow of its body filled the room completely now, shining like a beacon. The man rushed forward and pulled the child into his arms. The glow dimmed slightly, but he could still hear footsteps outside, circling the house slowly. He realized the truth in that moment. Whoever they were, they had found what they were looking for, and they would not leave until they got it. But he tightened his grip on the child and whispered fiercely, "You're not going anywhere. Not tonight." The alien hum outside grew louder, circling the house like predators around prey. And the man understood. This night was far from over. The man had never felt his house so small, so fragile. Every creak of the wood, every whistle of the wind through the cracks felt like a warning. He stood still, holding the alien baby close, its strange glow pressing into his chest like a heartbeat. The knocking sound had stopped for a moment, but the silence that followed was even worse. It was not the silence of peace, it was the silence of hunters waiting. His rifle shook slightly in his hands. He wasn't sure if it would matter. What could bullets do against whoever or whatever was outside? Still, it was all he had. He glanced down at the baby. The child's glowing eyes were wide open now, locked on the door, its small chest rising and falling quickly, as though it understood the danger better than he did. Another knock came. This time it was sharp, deliberate, like someone was certain he was inside and simply waiting for him to open. He hesitated. If he kept the door shut, they might break it down. If he opened it, he might not survive the night. He took a slow step forward, every muscle tense, and whispered to the baby, "Stay quiet." But the child let out a soft whimper, and the glowing fabric tightened around it as if trying to shield it. The knock came a third time, 3 hard thuds that shook the door on its hinges. Then a voice followed, deep, melodic, and alien. The words were unknown, but the tone was commanding, almost royal. The man's heart pounded. He reached for the doorknob but stopped, his breath caught in his throat. He could feel eyes watching him even through the wood, as though the figures outside could sense his fear. Finally, with trembling hands, he slowly unlatched the lock and opened the door a crack. What he saw froze him in place. 2 figures stood in the darkness, cloaked in silver armor that shimmered with the colors of the night sky. They were tall, taller than any human he had seen, their movements graceful yet sharp. The moonlight revealed their faces, women but not human. Their features were elegant and sharp, their eyes glowing faintly like the baby's, filled with a strange light. One of them spoke again in that alien tongue, pointing at the child in his arms. The other raised a hand, her palm glowing with energy that shimmered like liquid fire. The man stepped back instinctively, clutching the baby tighter. "No," he whispered. "You can't have it." The taller woman lowered her hood, revealing long hair that flowed like strands of silver. Her face was beautiful but stern, her eyes cold as they locked on the child. She spoke again, slower this time, as if trying to make him understand. Then she gestured firmly toward the baby, her voice leaving no doubt. She wanted him to hand it over. The baby let out a sharp cry and clung to the man's shirt. Its tiny claws dug into the fabric, trembling. The glow around it pulsed brighter, wrapping both of them in faint silver light. The women exchanged glances. One of them softened, her eyes showing a flicker of hesitation, but the other's glare hardened. She stepped forward, her armored boots hitting the wooden porch with a sound that made his skin crawl. The man aimed the rifle, though his hands shook so hard, he could barely keep it steady. "Stay back," he warned, his voice breaking. He didn't know if they understood his words, but his tone was clear. For a moment, everything froze. The man pointing his rifle, the baby glowing in his arms, and the 2 alien women staring at him with unblinking eyes. Then, without warning, the taller one raised her glowing palm. The air between them crackled with energy, and the man felt heat sting his skin. Before she could strike, the baby cried again, louder, the sound vibrating through the walls of the house. The light around the child flared, forcing the woman to step back as though burned. The man used the chance to slam the door shut and bolted again, his chest heaving. The house shook as one of the women pounded against the door, her strength far beyond human. The man staggered back, clutching the child, who was now sobbing softly. He whispered desperately, "Why are they after you? Who are you?" But no answer came, only the baby's frightened glow. From outside, he heard them speaking rapidly in their alien tongue, their voices sharp and tense. Then came silence again. He pressed his ear to the door but could hear nothing. Were they gone? Or waiting? Minutes passed like hours. Finally, he risked a glance through the small gap in the curtain. His blood ran cold. The 2 alien women were still there, standing at the edge of the trees, watching his house with glowing eyes. They were patient, like predators waiting for prey to tire. They didn't need to break in now. They could wait. The man backed away from the window, holding the baby close. He realized he was trapped. His small house, once a safe refuge, was now a cage with hunters circling outside. But as he looked down at the child, who nestled against him with trembling breaths, something inside him hardened. He could feel the weight of its tiny hand pressing against his chest, almost as if the child's heartbeat had joined with his own. He couldn't explain it, but he knew one thing for certain. Whatever these alien women wanted, he wasn't going to let them take the baby. Not tonight. Not ever. And in the distance, the strange hum rose again, louder this time, telling him the night's true danger had only just begun. The man barely slept. His body was exhausted, but his mind would not allow rest. He sat in the chair beside the bed where the alien baby lay wrapped in its glowing cloth. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the faint hum outside, or the memory of the knocks at the door. Dawn came slowly, painting the horizon with pale light, but even in daylight the fear remained. For a short time the forest seemed quiet. The birds returned, the river flowed gently, and the house looked almost normal. But the man knew nothing was normal anymore. He stood at the window, watching carefully, scanning the tree line. Nothing moved. No glowing lights, no armored figures. Perhaps they had gone. Perhaps the night had only been a warning. He turned back to the child, who was now awake. Its glowing eyes followed him around the room, full of strange intelligence. When he leaned closer, the baby made a soft noise, almost like a word. It startled him, not quite language, but not meaningless either. The sound lingered in his ears, heavy with mystery. Then came the sound he dreaded, the slow, deliberate knock, 3 times, the same as before. The man's body went cold. He held the baby tighter. No, he whispered to himself. Not again. But the knocking came once more, firmer this time. This time, however, there was no hum of hidden machines, no circling steps outside. Only silence and the voice of a woman calling softly through the door. The words were foreign, but the tone was different from last night, gentler, almost pleading. The man hesitated. Should he keep hiding? Should he run? But where would he go with an alien child? With trembling hands, he moved toward the door and opened it just a little. The 2 women stood there again, tall and regal, their armor reflecting the morning light. Without the cover of night, their features were clearer. They were beautiful, but in a sharp and distant way, like statues carved from silver. Their glowing eyes locked onto the baby immediately. The taller woman stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. She gestured to the child, then to herself, speaking in a flow of alien words. The meaning was hard to grasp, but her hands told the story. She claimed the baby as her own. The man shook his head. No, you can't take it. It's not safe. The shorter woman's expression softened. She lowered her hood and placed a hand on her chest, then pointed at the child. Her voice was quieter, carrying sorrow, as though she was trying to explain something important. The baby squirmed and let out a weak cry. Its glowing cloth tightened around its small body, refusing to release it. The women exchanged uneasy glances. They stepped closer. The man raised his rifle again, his hands shaking. Stay back! The taller woman's eyes narrowed. She spoke sharply now, her tone filled with command. Her words had weight, like an order that expected obedience. The shorter one placed a hand on her companion's arm, trying to hold her back. The baby suddenly wailed, louder than before. Its glow filled the entire room, casting silver blue light across the walls. The air grew heavy, almost vibrating with unseen energy. The women froze at the sight. Then, to the man's shock, the baby reached out toward him, its tiny hand clutching at his shirt. It did not reach for the women. It reached for him. The shorter woman gasped, her glowing eyes wide. She spoke quickly to the taller one, her tone urgent. The taller woman scowled, but for a brief moment her stern mask cracked into something else. Uncertainty. The man's heart pounded. You see? He shouted. The child doesn't want to go with you. The taller woman's gaze hardened again. She spoke slowly, each word deliberate, pointing at the baby, then at the sky. He couldn't understand, but the meaning was clear. The child was not meant for him. It belonged to them. He shook his head fiercely. No. You'll have to kill me first. Silence stretched between them. The women stood unmoving, their glowing eyes locked onto his defiance. The baby's glow dimmed, but it clung tightly to him, refusing to let go. Finally, the shorter woman stepped back. She lowered her eyes and spoke softly, as if making a promise. The taller one glared but did not strike. Instead, she gave a final sharp word, filled with warning, before turning away. The two of them retreated slowly into the trees, their silver armor fading into the forest shadows. But as they left, the man heard the taller one's voice linger in the air like a threat, carried by the wind. He stood frozen at the doorway, the baby heavy in his arms. Relief washed over him, but it was thin and short-lived. They hadn't left because they had given up. They had left because something worse was coming. The man looked down at the child, who now stared at him with calm, glowing eyes. For the first time, he realized he wasn't just protecting an innocent baby. He was caught in the middle of something larger, something powerful, ancient and dangerous. And no matter what claim those alien women made, the baby had chosen him. The man barely had time to breathe after the alien women vanished into the trees. The baby rested in his arms, glowing softly, but he could feel its tiny body trembling. Outside, the forest no longer sounded peaceful. Birds had gone silent, and the steady hum of insects faded as though nature itself sensed a predator's presence. He knew they would come back, not just those two alien women, but others. The taller one's last words, heavy and sharp, still rang in his mind. They had not given up. They had only delayed. The baby's cloth shimmered again, its patterns shifting like flowing water. The symbols glowed faintly, forming shapes he could almost recognize. For a moment he thought he saw something like a map. Then it vanished. The baby whimpered, clutching his shirt with its small claws. The man whispered, "Don't worry, I'll keep you safe." But even as he said the words, doubt burned in his chest. How could one man defend against creatures from another world? Still, he felt the baby's glow pulsing against his heart, and that strange warmth gave him strength. The sun climbed higher, but the unease deepened. He tried to keep calm, moving around the house, preparing supplies. He packed a small bag with water, food, and the rifle. He couldn't stay here any longer. The house was too open, too exposed. By afternoon, the forest grew darker, as if clouds had gathered, though the sky was still clear. The man stepped onto the porch, the baby held close. The trees swayed unnaturally, bending though no wind touched them. Then he heard it, the hum again. This time louder, surrounding the forest on all sides. He hurried into the woods, his boots crunching on dry leaves. His heart raced with every step. The baby's glow dimmed as if trying to hide, but the faint light still shimmered between the trees. He moved quickly, weaving through roots and branches, every sense sharpened by fear. Then he heard footsteps, soft, but too heavy to belong to deer or foxes. They were close. The man ducked behind a fallen log, pressing the baby against his chest. Through the gaps in the wood, he saw them, two more alien figures moving with graceful speed. Unlike the armored women, these wore darker suits built for stealth. Their eyes glowed faint green, scanning the ground, their weapons humming faintly in their hands. They were hunters. The man swallowed hard. He stayed still, barely daring to breathe, but the baby shifted and let out a faint cry. The hunters froze. Their glowing eyes snapped toward the log. "Damn," the man whispered. He bolted. The forest erupted with sound. The hunters charged, their weapons firing beams of green light that scorched the ground where he had stood seconds before. The man sprinted, ducking between trees, his lungs burning. The baby cried louder, its glow pulsing wildly, almost as if it felt his fear. The hunters shouted in their alien tongue, their voices sharp and violent. Energy blasts lit up the forest like lightning. Bark exploded from trees as shots missed him by inches. He ran harder, the weight of the child both a burden and a purpose. He reached the riverbank, gasping for breath. The rushing water gleamed under the sun. Without thinking, he slid down the bank and splashed into the shallow current, clutching the baby tight. The cold bit into his skin, but he kept moving. Maybe the river could hide their tracks. Behind him, the hunters reached the edge. Their glowing eyes scanned the water, then locked on him. One raised a weapon, but before it could fire, the baby let out a piercing cry. The air shook. The river surged violently as if the cry commanded it. A wave rose, knocking the hunters back into the trees. The man stumbled, half dragged by the current, but managed to crawl onto the far bank. He collapsed against a rock, drenched, gasping, but alive. The baby's glow dimmed again, its eyes half closed. It was exhausted, as if using its power had drained it. The man held it close, whispering, "You saved us." But the relief was short. In the distance, he heard voices, more of them. The hunters were not alone. He pushed himself up and staggered into the deeper forest. His boots slipped in the mud, his arms ached, but he refused to stop. Every shadow looked like danger. Every sound made his heart leap. Finally, he found shelter, a hollow beneath the roots of a massive tree. He crawled inside, cradling the child. The space was small, dark, and damp, but it hid them from sight. Outside, the hunters' voices grew closer. He pressed a hand over the baby's glowing cloth, whispering desperately, "Please, stay quiet." The glow dimmed further, almost disappearing, as if the baby understood. The footsteps passed. The hunters moved on, their strange language fading into the distance. The man let out a shaky breath, every muscle trembling. He looked down at the child, who now slept soundly against his chest. He knew the truth now. They would never stop. The women at his door had claimed the baby as theirs, but these hunters were something else entirely. And between them, he was caught in a battle he didn't understand. Still, as he held the sleeping child, he felt a strange certainty. He had no idea why this alien baby had chosen him, but it had, and he would not give it up, no matter what hunted them. The chase had only begun. The man stayed hidden under the roots until the sun slipped low, turning the forest gold in shadow. Hours passed in silence, broken only by his ragged breaths and the soft sighs of the alien child resting in his arms. His muscles ached, his nerves frayed, but he dared not move. At last, when the forest quieted, he crawled out of the hollow. His shirt was torn, mud caked his boots, and his hands shook with exhaustion. But his grip on the child never faltered. The baby stirred, its glowing eyes flicking open. The faint blue light pulsed weakly against his chest like a dying ember. "You're safe," he whispered, though the words felt empty. He had no plan, no shelter. He was a single man with a rifle, hunted by beings far stronger and far stranger than he could imagine. How could he keep his promise? He staggered forward through the forest, heading nowhere, just away. Away from the hunters, away from the lights, away from death. Then he froze. Ahead, standing between two trees, was one of the armored women. She was the shorter one, the one whose eyes had shown hesitation at his house. Now her silver armor glowed faintly in the fading light, and her long cloak swayed like water in the breeze. She raised no weapon. Her hands were open, palms outward, a universal sign of peace. The man's breath caught in his throat. He pulled the baby tighter and lifted his rifle, his body trembling with both fear and rage. "Stay back," he barked. "I won't let you take it." The woman's glowing eyes softened. She spoke in her strange language, slow and careful. He couldn't understand the words, but her tone was not commanding. It was almost pleading. The baby stirred again. To the man's shock, it cooed softly at her voice, its glow flickering brighter. The woman stepped closer, moving slowly so as not to startle him. The man shook his head violently. "No, you had your chance. You wanted to take it by force. I won't trust you." She stopped, her eyes steady on his. Then with deliberate slowness, she pressed her hand to her chest and spoke a single word. She repeated it, pointing at herself. Then she pointed at the child and spoke again, softer this time, almost reverent. The man's arms trembled. What are you saying?" As if in answer, the baby reached toward her. Its small claws stretched, and a strange humming sound filled the air. The cloth around it glowed brighter, forming shifting symbols that hung in the air like holograms. For the first time, the man saw her eyes widen, not with authority but with awe. She spoke again, her voice trembling. The man felt, even without translation, that this was no ordinary chase. This child was more than he had guessed. Finally, the woman knelt, lowering her body to his height. She tapped the ground, then spread her arms wide as if trying to tell him a story with gestures. She pointed at the sky, then at the child, then at him. Her glowing eyes searched his face with intensity, willing him to understand. The man lowered the rifle slightly. "You're saying it's important? To you, to your people?" She nodded sharply. Then she hesitated and placed a hand over her heart, bowing her head. Her voice lowered to a whisper as she said another word again and again. The baby answered with a tiny, soft sound. The man's chest tightened. He realized she wasn't a hunter. She wasn't here to harm the baby. She was a guardian. But why had she attacked his home? Why had she stood by while the taller woman tried to take the child by force? As if sensing his doubts, the woman's face darkened. She pointed into the forest where the hunters had gone. Her tone grew sharp, angry. She mimicked their movements, their weapons. She spat a word like venom. Then she gestured back to herself, striking her chest as if to say, "Not them. I am different." The man understood at last. The armored women and the hunters were not the same. The hunters wanted the child dead. She wanted it alive. But there was more. Her glowing eyes fixed on him, and she pointed at the baby, then at him. Slowly, she stepped closer and pressed her hand against his chest, right where the baby's glow pulsed. The man stiffened, but the warmth that spread through him was undeniable. For a moment, his vision blurred, and he saw flashes, images not from his mind, a world of silver skies, towers made of light, crowds bowing to a small figure that glowed like a star, and then war, shadows consuming cities, fire in the heavens, armies hunting the child. He stumbled back, gasping. The woman lowered her hand, watching him carefully. Her voice was quiet now, filled with urgency. The man's head spun, but the meaning was clear. The baby wasn't just an alien child. It was royalty, a leader, perhaps the last hope of its people. And for some reason, perhaps by accident, perhaps by fate, it had chosen him. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Why me?" The woman tilted her head, her silver hair falling across her armor. She spoke softly, but her eyes told him what her words could not. The bond was real. The baby had linked itself to him, and now its survival depended on him as much as on her. The man looked down at the child, who stared back with glowing eyes full of quiet trust. His fear melted into something else, resolve. He raised his head and met the woman's gaze. "If what you say is true, then we fight together. But I swear this, I won't let anyone take it from me." The woman nodded slowly, relief flickering across her face. For the first time, she looked less like a stranger and more like an ally. But before she could speak again, a roar split the air. The forest shook as explosions of green light lit the trees. The hunters had found them again. The woman's eyes blazed as she drew her weapon, silver armor sparking with energy. She spoke one word, clear and sharp: "Run." And the man knew the battle for the child had only just begun. The forest erupted with chaos. Green beams of energy sliced through the trees, shattering bark and scorching the ground. The hunters were no longer shadows moving in silence. They were a storm, advancing fast, their weapons screaming with power. The man clutched the alien baby close, his legs already running before his mind could think. Beside him, the armored woman moved like a flash of silver, her weapon glowing with pale fire. Each swing of her blade cut through the air, deflecting blasts with sparks that lit up the night. "Keep running," she shouted, not in English but in her tongue. Yet he understood her meaning. Instinct carried the words into his mind. Branches whipped his face, roots caught his boots, but he pushed forward, lungs burning. The baby pressed against his chest, glowing brighter with every blast, its tiny hands trembling. He whispered between gasps, "Hold on, hold on." Behind them, the hunters advanced in perfect formation. Cold, efficient, unstoppable. Their green eyes pierced the dark, their voices echoing commands through the forest. Shots flew past him, tearing through trees. He stumbled but didn't stop. At last, the woman darted ahead and raised her hand. A pulse of silver light exploded outward, striking the ground between them and the hunters. The earth cracked, a wall of light flaring like a shield. For a brief moment, the forest grew still. She turned to him, her glowing eyes sharp. She pointed toward a clearing ahead, her voice urgent. He understood safety, even if temporary, lay that way. The man nodded, forcing his legs to move. He reached the clearing just as the shield shattered behind him. The hunters broke through, their weapons blazing, and then the taller armored woman appeared. She dropped from the trees like a falling star, silver cloak whipping around her. Her eyes burned with cold fury as she drew her weapon, a massive spear glowing with deadly light. For a moment, the man froze, thinking she had come to finish what she started. But she didn't attack him. She turned, spear raised against the hunters. The man's breath caught. Allies or enemies, he could no longer tell. But she was fighting them, not him. The clearing became a battlefield. The hunters moved with precision, their green beams tearing through the night. The two armored women fought like living storms, silver and fire against shadow and venom. Every clash shook the ground, every cry of battle echoed through the trees. The man ducked behind a fallen trunk, holding the baby close. His rifle was useless against such power, but he couldn't just sit and wait. His hands shook as he loaded it anyway, eyes darting between the chaos. One hunter broke formation and spotted him. Its glowing eyes narrowed, weapon raised. The man didn't think, he fired. The shot cracked through the clearing, striking the hunter's chest. It staggered, not dead, but distracted long enough for the shorter woman to strike it down with her blade. The man's heart pounded. He had never felt so small, so powerless. Yet somehow, in this storm of alien war, his single action mattered. The hunters pressed harder, their numbers greater than he had thought. For every one that fell, 2 more appeared. The taller woman spun her spear, blocking 3 blasts at once, but even she staggered under the onslaught. The baby stirred in his arms, its glow rising. Its tiny claws pressed into his chest, and suddenly the warmth spread through his body again. His vision blurred and then cleared into something impossible. He saw the hunters' movements before they made them. He felt the pulse of their weapons, the shift of their weight. The baby had linked with him, sharing its sight. He raised the rifle again, steady now. Each shot he fired found its mark. Not killing, but wounding, slowing, forcing the hunters into mistakes. The armored women took advantage, cutting them down with silver light. But the hunters adapted. They closed in, surrounding the clearing. The hum of their weapons grew louder, a deadly chorus. The taller woman shouted something sharp. The shorter one echoed it. Both turned to him, eyes blazing. He didn't need translation to understand. This is the last stand. The hunters unleashed their final assault. Green beams rained like fire. The women fought with everything they had, their blades and spear glowing brighter than ever. The man fired until his rifle clicked empty, sweat and smoke blinding his eyes. And then, the baby cried. Not a weak cry, not the frightened whimper he had heard before, but a sound that shook the earth itself. The glow around it exploded, blinding silver light pouring out, flooding the clearing. The air trembled. Trees bent. The hunters staggered, their weapons shorting out, their bodies thrown back as if struck by a storm. The man shielded his eyes, clutching the child as the power surged through him. For one heartbeat he felt everything, the stars, the galaxies, the vastness of the universe inside this small being. When the light faded, silence fell. The hunters lay scattered, motionless. Smoke curled from their armor. The forest was broken but alive. The man sank to his knees, gasping. The baby's glow dimmed again, its eyes closing, exhausted. He held it close, whispering, "It's over. It's over." The 2 armored women approached slowly. Their weapons lowered. Their glowing eyes softened as they looked at him, not as an enemy, but as something else. The taller one, for the first time, bowed her head. The shorter one pressed her hand to her chest, her voice quiet, reverent. Though he couldn't understand her words, he felt the meaning. Protector. The man looked down at the child, then back at the women. He knew his life would never return to what it was. The river had given him a secret, and with it a burden greater than anything he had known. But as he stood, the baby safe in his arms, he felt no fear. Only resolve. The battle was over, but the war had just begun.